Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the number one home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
All right, folks, welcome to a special edition of our Ducks and Pucks podcast. We're going to be covering all the trade action by the Ducks that just happened this week. Answer some fan questions and go over some of that and talk about the matchups coming up in the next couple days. But before we get started, just want to give a happy birthday to the Ducks. If you didn't know, today, March 1st, back in 1993, Eddie, the Ducks became an actual NHL organization as far as their name on the state.
Perfect time to do a podcast then.
Yes, exactly. And one little fact, if you didn't know, in December of 1992 was when the actual franchise was awarded. But today is the actual date that their name, the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, was given to them. So with that, we'll get to all the trades now. The Ducks, just kind of like last year, Eddie, we did the blab. We went on there and we talked for a little bit. We had Phil Hewitt on there. We had Pete on there. That has helped us too. He runs the Everything Hockey account on Twitter. He's also wrote about us in Sports Illustrated. He's a very good friend of ours. They both came on along with Thomas and our writer, Phil, and we talked a lot about what had happened, but we didn't stay on long enough for all the moves, Eddie. We had a couple in the morning and then a couple in the afternoon. Some mixed reactions from the fans. Some fans were happy with some of the earlier ones and then not so happy with some of the later ones, but let's go with the first one, Eddie. This one, I believe, was a complete and absolute steal by Bob Murray. Brandon Perry comes to the Ducks for a 6th round pick in 2016, Eddie.
Yeah, we took Bob Murray a little bit for granted there, getting off early. I mean, we talked about the whole blab on how we would expect him to come in late in the thing in the trade deadline and pull something off, and we got off a little bit too early. And just a quick thing for anybody who wants to check that out still, you can actually go on the Ducks Pucks blab and you can rewatch the whole thing if you really want to watch all 4 hours. Or
4 hours.
So there's a couple highlights in there. I mean, I came on out in a blizzard at one point. Phil Hewitt was on there too as well, which is always entertaining. And as you said, Pete came on as well, which actually was very entertaining for us, and I guess for everybody viewing it at the time as well. So if you want to go check that out, you can go on Blab and go on the Ducks Pucks account on there and check it out. But definitely, yeah, moving on to the Brandon Perry trade. I mean, from what we heard, if anybody saw the tweets earlier on, the rumors of what the value was going to be for Brandon Perry was, there was a Western Conference team apparently offering a 2nd round pick. There was another team offering a 3rd and 4th, which a lot of people were saying, the Kings were the team offering the 2nd in speculation, and the Ducks were the team offering the 3rd and 4th. I mean, nothing was confirmed about that, but the reports themselves were coming from some pretty credible people. And then we see this trade come through, and for a 6th round pick, I mean, it's hard to say you want to say it's a steal of the draft, but it was a great trade. And I mean, for a guy who's 24, he's an RFA, so you do control him. I mean, this is the deal he was looking for, and what a cheap price to get him for.
Yeah, I agree, Eddie. I think we kind of exploded on Blab when this came out. We were shocked because, like you said, we were expecting him to go for 2nd, 3rd round pick, maybe 4th round. When we saw 6th round pick, we were like, wow, Bob Murray magic at its best. So, I mean, this was an awesome move for the Ducks, as you said. He scored 11 goals so far in 52 games with Florida this season. So, it's another scoring winger. He's got 24 total points in 52 games, which is not bad either. So we'll have to see. The only question with him is he's got an ankle injury, which they said that the team doctors are going to check him out this week. He and McGinn in the other trade, which we'll get to, both flew into Anaheim today. I don't know the exact time, but they weren't at practice. So we'll have to see how long. That's probably the only negative thing, Eddie, is the injury here. We don't know how long it's going to be, but I don't think it's going to be that long, or else Murray wouldn't have made this deal.
Yeah, and I mean, for a guy who's already scored 20 goals, he had a Cy Young type of year last year where he scored 22 goals, only had 2 assists, but still, I mean, he did surpass 20 goals, and a guy like Bodker who did go in, and for a hefty price that Colorado had to pay, a guy who's never scored 20 goals, and he went, for the price that he went for, and then you're able to get Brendan Peary for a 6th round pick. Yeah, it's just amazing. But yeah, with the injury, I don't think it's nagging. I mean, it's not too bad, and I mean the numbers he's put up so far have been pretty good as well. And I believe he spent most of the season in Florida playing on a checking role, other than the few times that he got an addition up on the top line with Barkov and Jagr. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he slots in when he comes back. I mean, a lot of people would like to see him maybe play with Getzlaf and Perron, and there's maybe the option as well of playing with Raquel and Perry. I think obviously the only solidified line right now is Kessler, Silfverberg, and Cogliano. That line has seemed to be it seemed to be untouchable for most of the season, and even during the winning streak when Boudreau has found the need to switch up the lineup.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we're going to get in more depth on all of this after we go through the next couple of trades, because obviously some more players got moved around. We'll kind of talk about what we think the lineups will be and where players will fit. We had a fan question about it as well. Getting to this next trade, this was another one that I liked too, Eddie. I liked Jamie McGinn from Buffalo coming over. He wears my number 88, so I was a little bit happy about that on a personal level. Nobody on the Ducks has ever worn 88. The only person to ever wear a number in the 80s was Brzgalov last year, shortly with number 80. But he comes over, and this is another good pickup. Another winger that can score. Another guy like we talked about. Maybe he goes on the Getzlaf line. Maybe he goes on the Raquel line. As you said, the Kessler line is pretty set. But again, a second move of the day, and another one that I liked, Eddie.
Yeah, and I mean for a top checking winger on a third line too. He doesn't take a lot of penalties, which is good for this Ducks team. I mean, obviously the penalty kill is good, but we've had our worries about a guy like Ryan Garbutt coming in, and so far he hasn't taken any penalties, which is great. And McGinn it plays a similar role, adds a little bit more offense, and he doesn't take a lot of penalties either. And I think that's going to be beneficial. I mean, he kind of comes in and is a little bit of an improvement on what Maroon brings. I mean, he's going to bring the physicality, he's going to forecheck, he's going to do all those things that we're going to miss about Maroon. But I mean, he brings that extra added ability to score and set up premium scoring chances, which I think is really going to help. And it's a silent but a really good improvement on us losing out on Maroon.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at him, he played at Buffalo in 63 games this year, 14 goals and 13 assists, 27 points. So that's, again, another, good, decent numbers that were put up, just like Paris. So we'll have to see where he fits on the line. But, overall, a really good deal. I mean, the Ducks gave up a 2016 third-round pick, which is conditional. Basically, if you follow the conditions, they can kind of be anything, I guess, really in the NHL. But for the way it works is Buffalo will get a third-round pick in 2016 unless Anaheim gets to the Western Conference Final and McGinn plays 50% of the games. If that happens, then it goes to a second-round pick, but not until 2017, Eddie.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I mean, the asking price on him for most of the rumors that were out there was that Buffalo was looking for a second-round pick, and I mean a lot of people, even without these additions and the way the Ducks have been playing, would expect them to make a push for the conference finals. I mean, it is a tough Western Conference, and I think it's a good deal. I mean, I would assume Murray put in the condition on this pick to protect the Ducks a little bit. If they don't go far, they still get to keep a second-round pick. And then the fact that if he doesn't play either, the Ducks have a deep roster. If he's not working out and he doesn't end up playing 50% of the games and the Ducks still go to the conference finals, that protects him as well. So I think there's a lot of protection for the Ducks here. And I mean, if he plays a prominent role and they get to the conference final or ultimately win the cup, I mean, to me, that's worth a second-round pick for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Eddie. I think the first two moves were very good by Bob Murray and the Ducks and no-brainers. Then we get to the next move, which, a lot of people were upset about this one, Eddie. This is, Patrick Maroon gets sent to Edmonton, and the Ducks get a prospect defenseman in Martin Gernat and a 2016 fourth-round pick. This was the one where a lot of people were really upset, but we kind of talked about this. I mean, after those other two deals were made, we talked about on Blab, we said, some people asked, we had Pete on there actually, he asked us, well, what do you do now? I said, well, I said either the Ducks are going to stay pat and not do anything, or if they're going to move, they're going to move Pat Maroon. And I mean, it was kind of a no-brainer, not but we had talked about this, weeks in advance of who would the Ducks move if they got another forward, and well, it was Patrick Maroon.
Yeah, and I think he's just a really popular player among the fans, and that's why a lot of people are sad to see him go. But like I said before, I mean, Jamie McGinn coming in, he does the same role physically, and he adds, I mean, about 20 more points on what Maroon has. I mean, Maroon has 13 points this season so far, 54 penalty minutes, and he was a minus 13 actually, which isn't a great number for him. Obviously, the Ducks struggled early on in the season, but it is sad to see a guy go that's been here for so long. I believe for the last 5 seasons now, and but when you're able to make an addition to your team, and somebody's got to go, and we talked about this as far back as when the Drouin rumors started, that if somebody comes in, any forward comes in, somebody's gonna have to go. I mean, we were already scratching guys when everybody was healthy before we added Perry McGinn, and when we were getting off Blab at the end of that, I said if Murray doesn't add, if Murray doesn't get rid of one of our roster forwards, we're going to have an issue where somebody's going to have to be scratched, because right now, I mean, all you can send down is Harry Z and Richie, and you've still got two guys left out to be scratched once Stewie comes back and Horkoff comes back. And, when you look through the roster, Maroon was the other guy out, and really no surprise that he eventually got dealt.
Yeah, and this is something that I can kind of talk about now too. Is a couple of different sources from the team told me about this too. Is that when he came into training camp, unfortunately, he wasn't ready to go, and I guess he got on the bad side of Bob Murray early in the season. And to be honest, he had a really slow start. I mean, he did play better once he played with Perry and Raquel, in the last couple of weeks. But unfortunately, he just never really got his steam going. So if you had to pick all the forwards that were on there and one that was going to have to go and be the odd man out once other forwards were brought in, he was definitely the guy, Eddie, because they weren't going to send him down to San Diego.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't going to waive him because you would expect somebody to pick him up. I mean, Edmonton really needed a player like this, and I mean, I think it comes down to he wasn't producing like he was last year. I mean, he finished last year with 34 points, and he had 11 points in 16 playoff games. I mean, he had a really, really good season for him. Those are all career high for him last year, and then he struggles this season. I mean, a lot of the Ducks struggled early on, but when they started picking it up, he didn't really get to that level that he did last year. And I think when Murray saw the opportunity to add and improve on those situations, I mean, unfortunately, he was the guy that was an easy way out.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean that's kind of what had to happen once they got those other players, because like you said, it was going to be too stacked. You had Chris Stewart coming back, Sean Horkoff's going to come back soon. The Ducks already sent Harry Z down. You still have Richie up, which they may or may not send down. I have to check the number of contracts the Ducks are under, because their rosters will expand and they can bring more to the team now. But I can't remember how the exact number at the top of my head. But the way it's going to work, I mean, it wouldn't work out. Like you said, there'd be too many players being scratched. The Ducks are already, super heavy at the blue line, which is more news we'll get to today with Holzer coming back up. So that's kind of the way that we figured it would go, and then it happened. And then the Ducks made one more move, not really a big move, Eddie, but they sent Tim Jackman out, brought in Corey Troop, and they also moved out a seventh round 2017 draft pick. But this is kind of more of a minor league deal. Corey Troop's going to be assigned to San Diego, just like or not. They both came out with that news today. But I was a little sad to see Jackman go. Kind of one of my favorites too. But again, I mean, it's just kind of another deal that they had to do, and they ended up switching just really minor league players. It wasn't really a big deal, but maybe a little bit of a surprise on my end, Eddie.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just adding a little bit of youth. I mean, Trop and Jackman are similar players. They're guys who are going to put up in the NHL maybe 10 points a season at their best, and they're physical guys. They'll fight. And I think the seventh round pick there is just to compensate for the difference in age. I mean, Trop is 26, so he's got a fair amount of years on Jackman, and I think they just wanted to add a little bit more grip and grit into the San Diego lineup, and just a younger guy. You can keep around the organization longer. Maybe if he excels down in San Diego in a couple of years, you could bring him up and he can be a pretty good fourth liner for the Ducks. So all in all, I like the trade. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it.
No, I agree. I just, he's just one of my favorites too. So just like I know a lot of people are upset about Maroon, I felt the same way. But like you said, if you look at all four of these moves, they all make sense. They all help the team. And that's kind of some of the fan questions we had. One of them we got from Adam. He asks, how do you think the Ducks stack up against Chicago now that this has all been said and done? And I think the Ducks are fine. I mean, obviously, we don't really have to worry about Chicago right now. We have to worry about LA and San Jose. Those are the two teams we really have to worry about, Eddie. But, I mean, the way the Ducks played Chicago all three games this year, they could have won all three. So I'm not really concerned about playing Chicago if the Ducks do indeed go to the Western Conference Final and meet Chicago. I mean, it's not going to be easy. Don't get me wrong. We're not going to beat them in 4 games. But I'm also not scared to play them again if that's what's going to happen, just like last year.
Yeah, and I think, Chicago bringing in Andrew Ladd and Weiss and Fleischman, it kind of gives them 3, if not 4 lines that can consistently, cause problems for teams. And that's what the Ducks have had all season. And that's why I said, I mean, when they were struggling so early on in the season, we said, yes, they're struggling, but they're playing playoff hockey and they're playing like a team who could go far in the playoffs. I mean, the defensively they're doing well. They just weren't scoring goals, and now they're scoring goals, and it's almost impossible for teams to match up against them. I mean, we've seen that with them winning 8 games in a row right now, and you bring in even more depth and with bringing in McGinn and Peary. And, obviously they add Ladd in the left wing they needed to play with Jonathan Taves and Marian Hossa. And, LA brings in Versteeg, a little bit of depth there for them. And you look at what a lot of these teams have in common is they have 3 or 4 lines that they can change on and match up. And I think the only advantage now that the Ducks have is that there's 3 lines with legitimate talent on them. I mean, you have to say that is probably the case now in Chicago as well. But you have to match up against Getzlaf and Perron. You have to match up against Perry and Raquel. You have to match up against Kessler and Silverberg and Cogliano. You have to match up against those 3 lines, and then you can throw out that energy line with Garbutt, who's been doing so well. And I think they do match up with Chicago now. I mean, we've seen that Kessler can shut down Taves, and now you've got to deal with Taves, Hossa, and Ladd. The Anisimov, Panera, and Kane line has been great for them all season. They can now throw out a third line with 2 familiar guys on it with Weiss and Fleischman. And Kruger or whoever else they have at center down there. So I think it's a very close matchup, but I think definitely that they can match up against them.
That kind of leads us into our other question too about the lineups. We kind of touched on it right there. Alexander asks about it. What does the forward lines look like, especially when everybody gets healthy? Well, obviously that's going to be, it's going to take some time here because today Horkoff was at practice, but he's not eligible to return officially till March 11th. Stewart, we haven't gotten an update yet, but he's at least a couple of weeks out. And Paris, we should get some kind of indication this week once he gets examined by the Ducks doctors. Now, you take those 3 out right now. We'll kind of look at the lineup a little bit, and then we'll add them back in. Right now, the way it looks to me, Eddie, and this is going to obviously have to be determined as these next couple of games go, but if the Ducks stick with what they had, I would see Perron, Getzlaf, and Santorelli together. Maybe Garbutt up there. They switched around a little bit in the Kings series. And then I would maybe see McGinn with Raquel and Perry. You keep Cogliano, Kessler, and Silverberg together. And then obviously the fourth line would be, Thompson and maybe Santorelli and Garbutt or Ritchie. I don't know, however it would, pan out in the fourth line. But that's kind of how I would see the lines now, with those 3 players being, on the IR or, soon to return.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Kessler, Cogliano, Silverberg line, that would be the line that you would expect to stay the same. Maroon was spending most of his time, I believe, with Raquel and Perry. So right now, I would like to see again go on that line and replace Maroon. Maroon was. I think that line can use some added grit on it, and then McGinn's obviously going to be able to set up a little bit more scoring chances for them. I like where Santorelli is on that top line right now with Getzlaf and Perron. Obviously, that might change when Peary is able to come back to the lineup or when Stewart's healthy closer to April. But And the fourth line has been good. I like what they've done with the fourth line, and maybe Richie goes down there like you said, or maybe he eventually gets sent down. But I think putting him again with Raquel and Perry is definitely the good place to start with him. I mean, eventually we might see him get a chance with Getzlaf and Perron too. I'm sure Boudreau will work everything out and find the best fit for him.
Now, speaking about it, the lineup, was completely healthy right now, and where everybody would be, which would be, kind of difficult because now you're bringing back in Stewart, you're bringing back in Horkoff, you're bringing back in Paris. I think it would be interesting. I mean, you could throw Stewart back with Perron and Getzlaf again. You put McGinn probably with Raquel and Perry. As you said, keep Cogliano, Kessler, and Silverberg together. And then the rest would probably be maybe on the fourth line. Maybe you put Paris, Santarelli on the fourth line with Thompson, and maybe mix Garbutt in there. I don't know. That's kind of what I would see once everybody's healthy, and then maybe Richie goes back down, or he's a healthy scratch. That's just kind of my speculation right now. Obviously, things can change. We got to see how McGinn does, and once the other guys come back, how they are too. But maybe that's a situation we kind of see there, Eddie, is that would be the top, three lines. I call them 1A, 1B, and 1C because, I mean, they all almost play the same amount of time, with the rest, being on the Thompson line.
Yeah, I think that's what you would expect. I mean, we're going to get to the same type of situation that we had earlier on the season when everybody was healthy, where Stewart was getting scratched here and there, so was Santarelli, and at times so was Maroon as well. And I think that's the situation they're going to get back to. Obviously, there's some locks where you would expect Getzlaf to stay with Perron. You'd expect the Kessler line to stay together, so that one's set. You'd expect Raquel and Perry to stay together, and then from there, it all depends how you want it. I think with everybody healthy, you would. It all depends. It's a tough situation because it all depends on how well somebody else does with Getzlaf and Perron. Obviously, Santarelli has done great. We all know Stewart was doing really good with him as well. But I think somebody can easily come in and do really well, and it creates a situation for Stewart when he comes back. And I mean, it's not a bad situation for the Ducks. It's never a bad situation to have, impact players that you can move around the lineup. But yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to scratch some people when Horkoff comes back soon. You would expect Richie to get sent down, or if Peary comes back even earlier than Horkoff, he's the easy option to send down with Harry C already gone down, and I'm completely fine with that too. So I think it'll be interesting to see. It's a very very hard call, other than the guys we already have locked in right now.
Yeah, but I think like you said, this is a good thing for the Ducks. The Ducks have plenty of players to put in these forward positions now. Where before, we had to bring up Richie, we had to bring up Harry C. Now, we're going to have all these other guys. We're going to get Stewart, Horkoff back. Paris will be in there too. We have plenty of guys. So I think that's huge for the Ducks. Like you said, it's a lock. You got Perron and Getzlaf together, Raquel and Perry, and then the Kessler line. Those, I mean, barring anything crazy, those should be at least the pairings and the one line the way it should be. And then after that, you kind of figure it out, like you said. So it's a very, very good situation going forward. Kind of shifting gears here, we had another question about the defense. And, at the trade deadline, nothing happened with Sammy Vatanen. He didn't get dealt. Lindholm didn't get dealt. Obviously, Raquel didn't, and Anderson. But if you look at the defense, the question is what about Sammy Vatanen, and what did the Ducks do kind of going forward here? Obviously, the defense is going to stay the same pretty much. We do know that Dupree, according to Eric Stevens, appeared to be ill today, so Holzer might play tomorrow instead of Dupree. That's really the only update we got on that end. But as far as what the Ducks will do, going forward, coming to the off season, it's going to be interesting, Eddie. I mean, they're going to have to make some decisions here. I really think that they're going to want to keep Lindholm and Raquel first. And then after that, they'll have to see, especially with Vatanen and then Anderson.
Yeah, and this is how I think it really deals out in the way guys get signed. Like you said, I think Raquel and Lindholm are the two guys you have to re-sign right away. Those are your first two priorities. I'm sure they're working with them now, and you would expect those guys to be locks to get re-signed. And then it kind of comes down to definitely Vaughn and Anderson. And I think with Perron being a UFA and the way he's playing right now, I think he gets thrown in the mix there as well as another decision for them too, because you only have so much money. Obviously, a big part of dealing Maroon away too as well is clearing up that cap space. McGinn is a UFA. You clear up about 1.5 with the Ducks retaining 25% of Maroon's salary. You clear up 1.5 million for the next 2 seasons, which is very helpful, and it helps you, having a little bit more flexibility in re-signing those guys. But yeah, I think one of them has to go. And I think Vatanen is your most likely option. I mean, I think everybody expects Shea Theodore to be up in the lineup next year. And everybody else is locked into contract. Lindholm, we said he has to be signed. Fowler's still going to be here unless you decide to trade him. Bieksa will still be here. Manson will still be here. Dupre will still be here. And I think he's the odd man out, even though he's having such a great season. But this is your chance to stock up on some forwards and replenish your draft pool. And I think it's a good opportunity for the Ducks. I mean, I think Theodore can come in and provide the same offense and the same production on the power play that Vatanen is providing this season. You do lose a right-hand shot, but I think it's a good opportunity for the Ducks, like I said, to trade him at the draft to a team who needs a puck-moving defenseman. And trust me, there's a lot of teams right now who could use a player like Sami Vatanen, and you're going to get a good return for him. Even with him, just being at an RFA status, I think it's a good opportunity for them to move him. And then once they do, you've got to choose between Perron and Anderson if you can't sign them both. I don't know. Obviously, we don't know what Raquel and Lindholm are going to get signed for and what Perron and Anderson would want. But if you have to choose between the two, it's a tough situation. I mean, who is our backup if you don't sign him? If you don't sign Freddie, I mean, you've got Gibby, and I believe that the organization believes that he's going to be the number one goalie for the future. And definitely Anderson could catch a good return, but right there is a tough situation, and I don't think I could choose right now who I would sign between Perron and Freddie.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we're going to have to see what happens. Obviously, we've still got a month or so left of regular season hockey. Then we've got the playoffs, of course, and that's going to have to determine what we decide to do as far as the RFA situation. I do think that Raquel and Lindholm are your number 1 and 2 guys you want to, keep, and then Vatanen you're going to have to figure out. Which just want to touch on a little bit. There were some rumors out there that we dispelled on Vatanen during this weekend. I got a lot of messages from all of you out there about Vatanen wanting $6 million per season for 6 years, and just want to let you all know that was never ever verified on social media. It was out there by a couple different people. I talked to Eric Stevens, and there was an NHL correspondent as well, and they said that was not true. So we know Vatanen's going to want more money. Obviously, he's only making $1.2 million, so he's going to want more. But that kind of a deal is a little bit far-fetched. So just be careful when you see people saying things like that out there, and they're trying to stir up fans, because I know some fans are kind of getting upset. And just be mindful, because the players do read social media. Their family do check out stuff. We have several parents that follow us and see what we do and what we say. So just be mindful of that. I do think Vatanen may get moved. Obviously, he is going to want more. And like you said, Eddie, it's going to really come down to Perron or Anderson. I mean, if the Ducks are going to play close to the cap or not, it's really going to be hard, because like you said, once Lindholm and Raquel get their deals, which, they're obviously going to both get bumps and increases, and deservedly so that they should, it's going to be hard to see. And then after that, you still got some other RFAs to decide on. You got Horkoff, you got Santorelli, and you got Stewart. So they're going to have to try and figure it out from there, Eddie.
And don't forget now that you also have Brendan Peary, depending on his play as well. He'll be an RFA that you have a chance to sign at the end of the season as well. And yeah, I mean, right at that point in time, I don't think I'd want to be Bob Murray. It's a tough decision. Those are two key players in Vatanen and Anderson that you have a chance to re-sign. But you also, if you do move them, you're not losing them for nothing. I mean, they are RFAs, they are locked in, and you have the ability to trade their rights. And it's a tough decision to maybe re-sign David Perron. I mean, the chemistry he's had with Ryan Getzlaf, if he can produce like this season after season, and you can keep Getzlaf and Perry apart and have that threat, I think it opens up your cup window a little bit longer, as long as Getzlaf and Perry and Kessler can produce at the way they've been doing lately. So it's a tough decision, and it's definitely one I'm glad I don't have to make.
Yeah, I agree, and that's what we try to tell people out there too. We see a lot of people that try to be armchair GMs or armchair coaches, and there's a lot of stuff that even we don't know. I mean, we get some info, but we don't know everything either. So I don't like to be critical of the GM or the coach on certain things. I mean, obviously, if the team is tanking and we're in last place, towards the end of the season, that'd be a different story. But as far as things are going right now, I mean, I don't like to be critical because we're not GMs, we're not coaches. We analyze the game, we give you our thoughts, and like you said, I'm glad I'm not in Murray's position. And speaking of that, with the GMs and the decisions that were made on this trade deadline, we can kind of talk about some of the other teams as well and the things that we saw. There were some surprises, maybe a little bit, Eddie, in the trade deadline. I mean, Erickson didn't get moved, Druin didn't get moved, Hamhuis didn't get moved. Some teams did nothing. I think it was the Sharks did nothing. The Leafs made some moves the days before. They didn't make any on the trade deadline. Vancouver did nothing. So I mean, there's some interesting things. What were your thoughts on the trade deadline? Any like winners and losers, or any surprises maybe that you saw from Monday?
There was a lot of. I think the Carolina Hurricanes were big winners. I mean, Eric Stahl, you get 2 second-round picks and a high-end prospect for your captain, and there's a high chance that he might even come back to Carolina and re-sign in the offseason. They'll have a fair amount of cap space if they want to bring him back. I don't think he'll fetch the 8.25 million that he did in his last contract, and there's no way the Rangers will be able to re-sign him. And they did. They got a good return from LA on Christopher Stieg too. So I think they improved their future and made some good moves as well. And you have to mention the Florida Panthers before the deadline, picking up Yuri Hudler, Teddy Purcell, and Jakob Kindl 2 days before the deadline. I mean, they did all their moves there, and they just bolstered their chances to go far in the playoffs. And the Leafs too. I think adding some more draft picks to the already big pool of draft picks that they had, and moving off some big contracts and taking advantage of a little bit of loopholes and bringing in some higher salary cap players to get a better return. I think they did a good job too. And I mean, there's a lot of teams who did a good job. I mean, I think Calgary did. Obviously, we did. But if you're gonna look on the other side of the spectrum, I think Vancouver not dealing Hamhuis. I know it was a tough situation. I know he refused any Eastern Conference trades. He wanted to stay closer to his family. He really liked to be in Vancouver, and I think they resigned to the fact that he was going to. But I mean, he was open to Dallas, and apparently there was a deal on the table. They had accepted it, but Benning, Vancouver's GM, came back and asked for more. And the deal just fell apart, and I think that's a very big mistake from them, and also not moving Radim Vrbata. That's a guy who's a UFA. It's hard to say if he'll sign in Vancouver next year, and you'll get it. You could get something for him. I mean, you could have got something, maybe a second-round pick, maybe a third and a fourth. You would still get something that's going to help you build for the future. And there's almost no way they make the playoffs now. So if you end up losing him for nothing, that's a big mistake by them. And then lastly, what you mentioned too was Drouin not being dealt. I think that's a huge surprise. I mean, the rumors that we're hearing in the days leading up, and even a day before and the day of, is he's probably going to get dealt. There's a high chance that one of these like 5 or 6 interested teams is going to make a deal, and nothing happened. I mean, it's surprising. I thought he was honestly going to get dealt. I heard Ottawa was in on him deep. Even the Ducks were in on him. St. Louis was in on him. Minnesota. I mean, a lot of teams that seemed like they had a lot of interest, but Yzerman couldn't get that player that could help them now. A lot of teams were giving up futures. I'm sure our offer probably included Brandon Montour in there, and they probably wanted a guy like Sammy Vatanen or Shattenkirk or Jonas Brodin. But a lot of these teams who were after Drouin were playoff teams, and it'll most likely now be a deal that's made at the draft.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think out of all the moves, the Drouin one was probably the worst. And as far as nothing getting done and being a surprise as well. And I kind of call it Drouin the ruin because I mean, he just really shot himself in the foot, Eddie. I mean, I don't like to criticize players and anything like that. That's not my style. But in this situation, I just think that he kind of went a little bit too far. And I think the best thing that he could do, Eddie, is to get back to practicing and getting back on his game. I know he's suspended right now, but he's going to need to work hard to get back to where, it's going to mean something to him. And it's going to be a real test for him. I really hope that he does turn it around. I really hope that he puts in the work and just keeps his mouth quiet. and does the hard work, because I think him and his agent coming out and all that stuff. I don't want to be critical, because he may turn around and may be awesome, and maybe in a couple of years we'll go back to this podcast and go, hey, I said he was going to turn it around, which I really hope anybody does, any player does. But I think that situation, and being a GM too in Yzerman's shoes, isn't easy either. Trying to figure that out and trying to maybe move him and get a guy that can help their team now, and at the same time and not have to deal with the whole situation. It's just an unfortunate situation all the way around, and you just hate to see that with any kind of team, Eddie.
Yeah, and Yzerman opened the door after the trade deadline for him to come back and play with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I believe him and his agent have turned down that opportunity, and they said that his time at Tampa Bay is done, and I think that's a big mistake from him. I mean, the only thing that can help him right now is playing hockey.
Yes.
But I think they don't really care the return that they get. He just wants to be dealt to another team, to a team that he can get a fresh start in. But it's a really poor situation for him, and I think it was handled just terribly by him and his agent. I think him playing in the AHL, he should have stayed there. They shouldn't have missed games. He shouldn't have led to the suspension. And it's a messy situation, and I'm surprised. So many teams were in on him. Obviously, he has talent, he has potential. His junior, career speaks to that. But this kind of tarnishes anything you do after this. I mean, if he becomes a superstar, I'm sure a lot of us forget about it. But right now, I mean, this is pretty much rock bottom for a guy that we expected to be a superstar by now in this league.
Yeah, I agree, Eddie. And it's just something that we're going to watch and have to see, what happens and how it goes from here on out. We'll kind of shift gears here and go back to the Ducks and finish up here on the podcast. But, this week they already beat the Kings. Corey Perry with his awesome hat trick got rid of my Ducks and Pucks hat. It ended up somewhere in the 200 level, and then hopefully it went on the ice. But I have some extra ones, so I'm not too worried about it. And I'm kind of glad I wear them to the game, because they're easily, replaced. But so they took out LA, which was fantastic. Again, 4-2, just like the last meeting. But this week's going to be a little intense. I mean, we've got Montreal on Wednesday night, and then they're going to go, to Arizona on Thursday, and then on Saturday, which we're going to have another watch party at El Ranchito, they're going to play LA. So, they're going to have three interesting games here. You have Montreal, who obviously has not been doing as well. It's kind of slipped down in the playoff hunt on Wednesday. You've got Arizona, who's trying to battle it out with Vancouver to, get maybe a wild card, but now that's looking kind of, bleak for them, as it's more or less Colorado and Minnesota fighting it out. And then, of course, you got LA on Saturday, which, if it's anything like the game on Sunday, it's going to be tons of fun. That was an intense game from start to finish, Eddie. So, another big week. Ducks already won one game. And I think out of these next three, that they can definitely take 2 out of 3.
Yeah, Montreal, it's going to be an interesting game. I think it's a lot easier now. They gave up Weiss, they gave up Fleischman. I mean, those are key depth guys to their team. Carey Price is still out, and they're still struggling. I mean, they're fighting to get in the playoffs. Their road record is not good. They're a lot better at home. Like you said, they just lost 6-2 to San Jose. Yesterday night, and now they're going to come in and play the Ducks, who've won 8 games in a row, and I think it should be not an easy win, but it should be a game that the Ducks can win. And I mean, the way they've been playing at home this season, and obviously as of late, they're now 28-4 at home. I mean, you would expect them to go into this game and win. And then you go on the road out to play Arizona, where they've been pretty decent at home. I mean, better than they are on the road, that's for sure. But they just got thrashed by Pittsburgh 6-0 the other night. And they just lost Mikhail Bodkar. Obviously brought in Alex Tonga, who will play a similar role but won't provide as much for them. And it doesn't look like they've resigned to being out of the playoffs. But right now they're sitting 8 points out of a wild card spot, and 14 points out of the last spot in the division that's held by the San Jose Sharks. So it's almost too late for them. The Ducks should go in there, take advantage of the fact that they've been scoring a lot of goals lately. Arizona's lost 6 in a row, so that doesn't help them either. So again, I mean, we talked about before when they played the Kings, you could possibly go into LA having won 7 games in a row. Well, you might possibly go into playing in LA at Staples Center, having won 10 in a row again. I mean, that would be the ideal situation, obviously. I mean, we would all love it if they'd never lost a game for the rest of the year. I don't think that's going to happen. But, you could go into Staples Center having 10 in a row with these next few games. And boy, that would be another great game. I mean, the last game against LA on Sunday was amazing. But, I mean, this could mean even more.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be intense. I mean, it seems like now every time, we get within 2 points, the Kings win. And then the Ducks, are down by 4. The Ducks win, they're within 2, and it just seems to keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So, it's going to be a tight race. You have the Kings, at least at the time of recording this, they're at 78 points. The Ducks are at 76, and San Jose at 74. So, it's an all-Cali team affair in the Pacific Division, which is kind of what we had thought way back in the beginning of the season. It wasn't like that in the beginning. It looked like it was going to be Arizona and LA up there and a big dog pile behind. But now it's kind of gotten a little bit clearer, and it's going to be the California teams most likely battling it out for the 1, 2, and 3. It's going to be fun, and it's going to be intense. Obviously, the Ducks are going to play the Kings this week. They're going to play them one more time after that. But I like the way the Ducks are playing. I mean, if you look at February, they're 12-1-1, Eddie. They set the record for the points in that, franchise record for points in the last month. It was their best month. Getzlaf's on fire. He gets the number 1 star in the NHL, 20 points, 6 goals and 14 assists, a plus 13 rating, and 11 game point streak. I mean, hello, who would have thought that back in the beginning of the season? A lot of people were upset with him in the beginning. Then we found out he was injured, and now he's just killing it. I mean, him and Perron have just been going bonkers, basically, on the Ducks. And with these added players, I mean, everything looks bright. If you're a Ducks fan right now, you really don't have anything to complain about. I mean, you may be sad that Maroon or Jackman are gone or whatnot, but you really have to look at this team, and you have to be extremely positive going into March and into April. This team that went from being, at almost the last place. I think they were, what were they, 29th or 30th, whatever it was.
I think at one point they were 30th in the entire NHL.
Yeah, back in November, the beginning of November, or whatever it was. They were at the bottom. And now, if you look at the Ducks, they could be the best team in the entire conference. I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch because Chicago and Dallas are both at 83 points, but they've also played 3 more games. So if you look at it there, I mean, there's a 9-point difference, but it's really a 3-point difference because of the game differential. So, I mean, there's still a chance that, I mean, could you imagine the Ducks go from all the way in the bottom and they end up first in the Western Conference? Who would have thought that? I mean, we thought at the beginning of the season before the melee and the massacre of October. But, I mean, you have to look at this team. Look at what they're doing right now. I mean, after Christmas, I don't know if they read my article and Eric Stevens' article, where we were both pretty critical, but they freaking turned on the Jets and have just been destroying people. I mean, they only lost 1 game in regulation in February. That's just crazy, Eddie.
Yeah, and they could come all the way back and take this and just steal this division away from the LA Kings, something that we thought they had locked up way ahead of time. And now you're right back in it. You win this game tomorrow. You're not in first, but you're tied for first with the LA Kings. Obviously, with the tiebreakers, I believe because the Kings have scored more goals and they have more regulation overtime wins, you're still in second place. But like you said, I mean, if they win the next 3 games and you look at where they would be at 64 games played, where Chicago's at, you'd be 1 point behind the Western Conference lead. I mean, I don't think anybody thought that they would be in this position this far into the season the way they had started, but I mean, it's a testament to how they fought back. The additions that Murray has made, with Perron coming in and even Garbutt coming in as well, have just really helped the Ducks. I mean, Perron has been amazing, more than we could have expected. I mean, we easily won that trade. Obviously, Hagelin is doing pretty well in Pittsburgh, but the way that this trade has helped out Ryan Getzlaf. I mean, ever since Perron has come in, Perron's been here for 18 games. I mean, majority of that's been on Getzlaf's line. And you look at the tear that Getzlaf went on in February, and some of that has to be attributed to Perron playing beside him, and it's really helped spur them on this run, which could get them to win the Pacific Division again. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more that can be said, really. I mean, the way that the Ducks have turned this around, you have to give Murray some credit too. I mean, he has some serious cojones to stick with Boudreau when a lot of people back at the end of October, beginning of November were upset. And if you caught the article that we had, I went to the Ducks Diehards party, and usually they have a player there. Instead, they had Boudreau, which was a surprise. We were all thinking, oh, let's player's going to come out. Instead, it was Boudreau, who was hilarious. If you haven't read that article, you have to go back. There are some hilarious quotes in there, and I think the best one, Eddie, was going back to the road trip in December before Christmas when they lost to Buffalo, and he said that. He was worried about getting fired, and he basically hit out, and he said, you know what, if Murray can't find me, he can't fire me. I mean, I just thought that was hilarious, and he's just cracking me up. I mean, he was very, very, funny. Some of the answers, like some people would ask some questions and he would be like, well, the standard answer is, oh, we got to play better and try harder. But, and then he would be like, well, screw that. He's like, do your job. And, he would just start going off on, how he really would be, how a coach would be in the locker room, trying to motivate the guys and do what they got to do. And, it was interesting. It was a different side that even I hadn't seen at Boudreau before. I had met him outside of practice a couple times and had seen him in a few things, but I mean, it was hilarious. He's just one funny guy, and for the Ducks to come back, you have to give him credit. You have to give the whole team credit, and you have to give Murray. I mean, it's just been amazing. I mean, it was a rough start in October. The way that they've turned it around has been awesome. Obviously. Well, we're not going to be completely happy. We want to keep this going. So I'm hoping that they do, and then we go into the playoffs and we carry into the playoffs, and then, from there we'll see what happens. But, everything's going good for the team. You should, if you're a Ducks fan right now, you should be extremely happy with the way things are going. This team is rolling right now. I don't remember a time when the team has been doing, this well after doing so poorly, other than going back to when they made the playoffs in 96, 97, when they had that same terrible start. So it's just been a great season all around, Eddie. And I think you and I are going to enjoy the ride. We're going to be here every week talking about it. And it's going to be a fun time.
Yeah, and like you said before, a lot of credit has to go to Bob Murray for keeping Bruce Boudreau into the system. I put a lot of the blame on the players, which is well deserved. I mean, they were playing poorly to start the season, and you can't really put all the blame on Bruce Boudreau. And it really showed the players that they've got to step it up here. I mean, the coach isn't going anywhere. This is the guy you've got to play for, so play for him. And that's what's turned it around. And I mean, Boudreau's a great coach. Like we said before, when all this mess was happening, if you get rid of him, who are you going to replace him with? There's no one better than him that we could replace him with. And arguably, there was he was better than some of the coaches that were even winning. At the time, and I mean, look where we are now. I mean, it's great testament to his belief in Boudreau and the system that he instills and the players that he has that they could pick it up and get to where they are now.
Absolutely right, Eddie. And even the players backed him up too, back in the beginning too. When some people thought maybe some things were going on, according to players, that wasn't true. They all said, you know what? No, it's on us. We're the ones not gelling. We're the ones not doing it. I mean, they were playing defense, but they weren't playing offense. And they were upfront about it too. So all around, everybody, did what they needed to do, and they turned it around. And this, podcast was obviously a special one that we did with the trade deadline. But we'll hopefully be back either Saturday or Sunday. That's what we usually do. And if you can come out to the watch party, we'll be there at El Ranchito in Orange. This Saturday, probably around 12 o'clock. I believe the game's at 1. So I hope to see you there, and let's go Ducks.